Well, the Artemis II mission is being hailed as a defining moment in the history of space exploration, marking humanity's long-awaited return to deep space after more than 5 decades. For the first time since the Apollo era, astronauts will travel beyond low Earth orbit, venturing towards the moon aboard NASA's Orion spacecraft. This mission is not just symbolic, it will push human spaceflight farther than ever before, testing new boundaries and proving that we are ready to step back into lunar space. But Artemis II is more than just a journey. It is a critical test for the future. The mission will validate essential systems like life support, navigation and communication in deep space, paving the way for future moon landings and eventually missions to Mars. With a diverse crew representing a new era of global space exploration, Artemis II signals that humanity is not just returning to the moon, but preparing to stay, explore and go even further. Joining us to talk more about this at this point in time is Captain Scott Kelly, former NASA astronaut. Captain Kelly, appreciate you taking out the time and speaking to us. If we were with you at the Kennedy Space Center during this launch, how was the mood like in the camp?
It seemed to me very similar vibe, I think, as a space shuttle launch. Um, I've been to a bunch of those at the Kennedy Space Center. I've been in two of those space shuttles when they launched. But there's this like kind of little bit level of excitement, a little bit of anxiety, anticipation, and but the difference here is, unlike the space shuttle, we're actually going back to the moon. So there was that added level of intensity, I think.
Can you explain to us why this mission is a first and crucial to mankind, so to speak?
Well, I think it's inevitable that humans will put a base on the moon, later on Mars. I mean, if you looked at human history, whenever we've went to a place, we've visited first, and then, at some point we'll establish a human presence there. And I think we're kind of on the cusp of that, doing it within a few years. There's a lot of stuff we could do on the moon. Developing technologies, science, astronomy, understanding where the moon came from is important to understanding our own planet. And I think, like NASA has been part of developing a space-based economy in low Earth orbit, now we're going to do the same thing on the moon. And this is the first step.
Well, a lot of people do question why humans are still probing the moon. Can you shed some light on why moon remains important to space exploration still?
It's very important. I mean, India has explored the moon, right? You guys have landed on the moon. Not with people yet, but probably someday you will. We went to the moon last time in the late 1960s and early 70s. And as I'm sure everyone watching the show will understand very well, how much technology has changed since then. I mean, the rockets that we used to send to the moon, those spacecraft had less computing power than this does. And because technology has expanded so greatly between now and then, we have the ability to do much more sophisticated, serious science, but we also have the ability and potentially, the infrastructure, as long as we continue to have the goal and the desire to do it, to put people on the surface of the moon for longer periods of time, which through those technologies will benefit life here on Earth. Maybe not immediately, but if you look at this just space program, the history of it, if we never went to space, never had a space program, our lives would be much less richer, I think.
Well, you must have seen this image of the crescent Earth that has been captured by the Orion. What can you see in this image, and why has capturing this been such a rarity?
Well, I think it's significant just because it's the view that people would see. I mean, of course, we can get amazing views of the Earth, we can get amazing views of the moon with telescopes, with spacecraft without people. But I think when you add the human element into something like this kind of achievement, it makes it more relatable to people. I mean, it's one thing to look at the image that a camera took, but to understand that there was a person behind that camera seeing that same view is, I think, incredibly inspirational. And this is a remarkable achievement, not only for the United States, but for countries around the world. I mean, hardware for this mission was not just made in the US. Obviously, we have a Canadian crew member on board. It's an international effort. And, it's just different when there are people involved.
Well, you have just emphasized on the fact that we have a Canadian astronaut. Launch has been done by NASA. How important is it in these times that the future of space exploration is one of collaboration and not any other factor?
I wish I would be hopeful that the whole planet could collaborate peacefully on something like space flight and space exploration, but we don't all get along very well always, and so it's been a challenge. But we have been able to cooperate with Russia, that has historically been, an enemy of the United States at certain times, not the friendliest place right now, and still we're able to live and work in space with the cosmonauts and work with their space program. So it's it gives us this neutral environment to do incredibly complex, incredibly challenging, and incredibly important things. And these missions are expensive, so spreading that cost is important. And also, different countries, different cultures, different civilizations, I guess you might even argue at some point, look at things differently, do things different ways. And when you have in my opinion, a group of people that are different, you have more options, more choices, more solutions to problems, more people with ideas that are different, and that helps us accomplish these very, very challenging and incredible goals.
Well, Captain Kelly, the four astronauts who have embarked on this journey would be living inside the Orion spacecraft for 12 days. How challenging does that get, and how intense does it get inside such a capsule?
I'm not too familiar with their mission timeline and the amount of activities they have to do. I'm sure these guys are up to it. I mean, three of them have done long duration flights on the space station where you have a lot of work to do and not a whole lot of time. The environment, the size of the vehicle, if you think about it in a terrestrial context, is not all that large. But when you consider that you can use all the space above your head, and the size, I don't think is as important as making sure the crew members have stuff to do for 10 days. I was on a Russian Soyuz once, and it was taking us 2 days to dock with the space station. And I could just remember looking at my watch thinking, oh, this is great. We docked today, docking day. And then it was in 20 hours. And I had absolutely nothing to do. I didn't have anything to read, any music to listen to, couldn't look out the window. So I think as long as they have stuff to do, the size of the capsule is not that big of a deal.
And Captain Kelly, when you are inside that spacecraft and taking off, what do you think is going on? What's the feeling like in that moment? What do you tell yourself, and what do you, in fact, get distracted by?
This is a spacecraft, Artemis, that has never flown with people before. I've never flown on a spacecraft that was brand new. But I would imagine it's very similar to my experience. And what you're thinking about is, what's my job? What do I need to be focusing on? What do I need to be prepared to do if something goes wrong? And that's, I think, mostly what occupies people's minds when they're launching on a rocket into space, especially a new rocket.
And how crucial is optimizing crew health in such a mission for the future of space exploration?
It's important. I mean, it's one of the major objectives of the International Space Station program. I mean, understanding human physiology and how it reacts and behaves in that environment when exposed to it for long periods of time, or, with Artemis, once you get beyond the Van Allen our magnetic field that protects us from radiation, there are other considerations. So crew health, performance in space, very important studies. We human beings evolved in gravity. So gravity is critical to how some of our physiology behaves, like, muscle and bone loss, the radiation we get in space. So there's all these things that we need to understand how to mitigate if we're going to live and work in space for longer periods of time. 10-day flight, obviously bone loss and muscle loss is not a factor, but there are other things they need to consider and understand better.
And what part of that future of space exploration really, excites you as a person?
All of it. Commercial space flight, getting more people into space, commercial space stations, a space station on the moon. If I had to pick one right now, I would say, just seeing some people, my former colleagues, friends, just humans in general, stepping foot on the moon again after over 50 years will be extraordinary.
Captain Kelly, appreciate you taking out the time and speaking to us. Thank you so much for your availability. Well, on that note, we take a short break. We'll be right back.